Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Sezzle. This was a stock analysis request from one of the followers, and I wanted to let you know that anyone can make these requests and I'll most likely cover them, especially if there is an actionable trade setup to follow. And in the case of this chart, we can see some very interesting price action going on. Although, unfortunately, most likely we are dealing with a diagonal pattern where right now we are debating whether we have already formed a top within a more significant wave tree. So I don't necessarily expect this larger structure to already have a top in place. I would still prefer to see further continuation higher. It is possible, I'm not denying that, but I would need to see some further evidence that a top is already in place. Yeah, even more. A more significant top than just an internal wave 3, I mean. Now, within this structure, I'm tracking this as a wave 1 up, a wave 2 down, and this movement to the upside could be a wave 3 complete, although, again, I am considering still possible extensions within this wave 3. And within this structure, since we are tracking a diagonal pattern, we are of course looking at an ABC movement to be formed within the wave 3 itself, where this would be a wave A up, a wave B down, and then a wave C to the upside. And in the white scenario, we are going to consider that this was the wave 5, we have already formed a more significant top, and that we should be prepared for the correction within the wave 4. And then we have the yellow interpretation, which actually considers that this was only the wave 3 top in a larger ABC structure, where then we could expect after the correction in wave 4 continuation in yet another high within this larger wave 3. Now, in both interpretations, we have an overlapping area of support where for the yellow scenario, we are looking here at the levels between the $96.7 all the way down to the $33.8 level at a 61.8% retracement, where this scenario remains active and applicable only as long as we don't get a definitive break, a sustained break below the 61.8% retracement. And then, as I was mentioning, in the white interpretation, we actually have a much deeper retracement area, but it is overlapping. These areas of support do have common ground where actually we have already gotten into the area within both of them. Now, we won't focus too much on the white interpretation area of support right now because, again, we are still within a relevant area of support. We can still track continuation higher, and in the end, yes, we may not get a definitive answer on which pattern will really be playing out during the next movement to the upside, and we may need to wait for a break of a larger retracement afterwards, where, yeah, if we consider that this was an extension within the yellow interpretation, we would look still for another fourth and a fifth before we consider this larger structure complete, whereas in the white scenario, we would need to consider a larger wave 1 already in place, and we would need to be looking for a much deeper retracement within a wave 2 correction. And it is unfortunate, but the markets aren't always intuitive, and yeah, we may need to follow along a more complex structure or with a couple of different patterns that could technically work out in an overall larger uptrend that would really take a long time before we would get a definitive answer in terms of which structure is going to play out, because, well, these structures are not determined. We cannot tell which one is going to play out. They are also not decided just yet, and they are built by the broader market sentiment that is ready to morph and shift between scenarios at any time. Now, what I want to make clear is that most likely, I do not expect a more significant top to already be in place. In the interpretation of a larger ABC movement, sure, but not within the interpretation of a larger 5-way move to the upside. And it is unfortunate because it doesn't allow us on this time frame to track a more clear expectation, which forces us really to actually focus on the smaller time frame to determine what type of structure we should really follow. And yeah, we need to keep a closer look here in the case of this chart on a smaller time frame. Now, in this structure within this correction, unfortunately there is a serious risk that this could be an initial 5-way move to the downside which has formed, which actually cautions us that it is rather likely than not that we should be prepared after a 3-wave correction for continuation in another 5-way move to the downside. Now, this could very easily actually take us even below the area of support of the yellow interpretation, which would, on a large time frame perspective, make things a lot easier, but again, we need to track the internal structure within this area for signals that this movement to the upside is not a more sustained push into new all-time high territory. But for now, we can track here an internal area of resistance for a potential larger structure to the downside. And in this idea, we will be tracking here an A wave down, a B wave up, and then a C wave that could still come to the downside. And well, it is possible for me to also consider this a 1, 2, 3, a fourth, and a fifth. I don't necessarily prefer this idea, this interpretation where the wave 3 or this entire structure would be tracked as a larger diagonal pattern, and I would prefer that we actually have a wave A bottom already in place. But yeah, it is a possibility, and in that scenario we wouldn't need necessarily to form additional highs before heading lower, but that is not necessarily a preference for me. What I prefer is that even within a more bearish interpretation where this correction extends even more, that we actually head deeper into this area of resistance that we have here in orange at the levels between the $82 level all the way up to the $140.4 level at the 78.6% retracement. And one other point that I do want to mention, this correction is already quite disproportionate from what we would have here in a wave 2. We need to be aware that this could be a signal that a much more significant correction would be playing out, yeah, possibly of a correction of a pattern that would have a more significant top in this area. It is not a good sign that we actually extended so largely within this movement to the downside, but we will continue to track here the internal structure that actually allows us at the moment to look with even decent probabilities for continuation higher. And that is, as with this initial movement to the upside, I am able to consider an initial potential wave 1 up and have the possibility to track a wave 2 correction to the downside, allowing me to look even for a wave 3 possibility on this time frame. Now, in this case, we would be watching here the levels of support between the $65 level all the way down to the $54.4 level, where as long as we hold here the 78.6% retracement, we can still continue. Yeah, let me adjust this slightly, but we can still continue to track here continuation higher after a 3-wave correction into this area with another 5-wave move to the upside. Now, this could be indeed a wave 3, what we have here in a green interpretation, and maybe this would look better in blue. It might be a little bit more visible. And yeah, this may work out as a wave 3 indeed, but it could also play out into the orange interpretation in a larger ABC movement. Yeah, just to be clear, this could be part very easily still of this larger wave B, but it is just a signal to us that we should prefer at the moment extension within another 5-wave move to the upside. Once we have here the wave 1 complete, this initial movement complete, we have a 3-wave correction into the area of support. We should prefer another 5-wave move to the upside, again, be it in a wave 3 in blue or a wave C in orange. Now, while I could see this wave 1 top being already in place, I also consider it possible for this structure to extend even higher, where realistically, while this could be the 5th wave, it could be just the wave A, we could get a wave B and then a C wave to the upside. However, this is not for any trading purposes. This is only for the purpose of tracking an invalidation point and an improbability point for continuation higher within this structure, because in here we will be tracking in green internally continuation higher within the wave C, but if we manage to break here below the $68.4 level, it should be a signal to us, and this is what is the most important part, that this structure could be expected with higher probabilities to head at least into the larger area of support in blue. And in terms of resistance, we won't be focusing on anything here internally. Yeah, sure, if we break above certain levels, we can track, I suppose, yeah, the 78.6% retracement, the $75.6 level would be a signal that if we break above that this structure would likely extend higher. But yeah, honestly, those levels in this structure to the downside aren't necessarily as indicative. And I would personally recommend not to dwell too much into this time frame and rather zoom out and plan from a larger time frame perspective, as here there is some potential, there is some interesting movements that could be seen, and we have a somewhat interesting area of support here internally within this blue interpretation. And for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.